Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world in 30 answers. Discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and I'm here in Healdsburg, Sonoma, with my friend Dan Glover of L'Objet Noir Wine. Welcome, Dan, and tell everyone a little bit about L'Objet Noir.
Well, thanks for having me, Allison. L'Objet Noir Wines really came about because, I was working as a winemaker in another place, and I found this vineyard that I absolutely love. It was a Pinot Noir vineyard, and it was fairly famous, and it was the fruit I've made from there before. I know it's amazing fruit, and I had a once-in-a-lifetime chance to grab this fruit, so I jumped on it. And then I figured out that I had to actually sell the stuff so I could keep making it. So I had to decide whether or not to stay with my steady winemaking job or break out on my own and start my own label. And that's what happened. I said, I'm out. I'm diving into this and starting my own label.
And what year was that?
That was 2009, right after the 2009 harvest.
And so with L'Objet Noir, how much wine are you making, and what are the varieties you're focusing on?
I make about 700 to 800 cases, and mostly Pinot Noir and Sauvignon Blanc. I dabble in some Rosé. And this year, I'm coming up with a new red blend. And I'm not sure what the percentages are, but it's probably going to be Zinfandel, Petit Syrah, and maybe a couple of other varietals that I'm not.
We'll just have to wait in anticipation.
There's the tease.
So, you're sourcing all your fruit from different vineyards. What areas are you sourcing fruit from?
Let's see. The Pinot Noir is both from Russian River and Santa Rita Hills down in San Ynez Valley, and I'm also doing Sauvignon Blanc and the new Zin from Dry Creek.
Okay. And what markets are your wines available in?
Pretty much all available online. I don't have a big wholesale retail presence. They're in a couple of restaurants, but for the most part, I sell everything by hand, direct to consumer.
Bottle by bottle.
Bottle by bottle. Please, begging. No, I'm kidding.
So what is your first memory relevant to wine?
Well, I can remember my mom having parties and, waking up and coming downstairs the next morning and there's half-empty glasses of Latouche or something, and you just go, ew, this is gross. But I think my favorite memory was I was drinking a Chateauneuf de Pape for the first time. And I remember how the wine kept changing. I'd pour a glass and it would just change almost after every time I swirled it and smelled it. I got different things from it. And then, you pour a second glass and then it's a totally different world. Everything and that to me was just like this angel singing. It was, oh God, it just changed my life. And that bottle of wine changed my life. And I went, okay, I'm really into this now. And started drinking wine more, instead of, I pretty much stopped drinking beer because I started just going into wine at that point. And it turned into me because I love to cook also. So it turned into me really diving in and learning, experimenting with wine and food and pairings and that type of thing, which was then, it was just even more so just, wow, this is crazy. So then the passion just grew from there.
And as that passion grew, is there one particular wine that's been the most memorable wine you've ever drunk or rates up there with one of the most memorable specific wines?
Oh, there's a lot of them. Well, I'll use that one. It was the View Telegraph, which was...
And what was the occasion?
We were out at a fancy dinner in San Francisco. Fancy pants dinner. At a place called the Cypress Room. So old people from San Francisco remember that place. It was a very cool, eclectic restaurant. And yeah, we were splurging. We didn't really have that much money to spend on dinner and wine like that, but we went, what the heck? And yeah, it was
the one.
Yeah. And the way it went with food that was brought to us, it was just like, this is amazing.
And tell me, in traveling, have you traveled a bit abroad?
Yes.
And what is the best foreign wine you've ever drunk, aside from the Chateauneuf de Pape that you've just mentioned? Or is that still the best wine?
Yeah, that's one of the best. But the thing is when I've traveled abroad, I really haven't done it for winemaking purposes. It was a lot of before I was into wine. I was very into wine at the time, but it was more for other reasons, work and things like that. So, but when I was actually in winemaking, I went to Spain in 2000 and it's 2002, and for New Year's Eve. And I have to tell you, I think one of my favorite wine experiences was just drinking the Rosado in all the bodegas. And eating just somebody would, you always see that leg of ham just sitting there and they slice off some for you and you're eating just these little plates of food and these little things. And this bottle of Rosado that with no label on it shows up on your table for, at the time, like €2-3. And you're just going, this is amazing. And again, but in that experience, really broaden my food and wine pairing knowledge, because I didn't know that this, and I realized how regional that can be, like how the wines and the food are meant to be paired together. So when you're eating this Iberico ham and you're drinking this Rosado, and somehow it just goes great together. You don't know why, but you're like this, thinking about it logically, you're like, this shouldn't. But it does. And, maybe it's because of the other things you're eating along with it. But still, it's just like, wow, this is amazing. And I think it's not just the particular wine. I think it's more the experience.
Do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
Ooh, that's a toughie. A perfect variety. From a winemaking standpoint, actually producing the wine, no. They all have their quirks. They're all, you have to treat each one different. Like with Pinot Noir, it's, for me anyway, it's less manipulation, let it be. And with something like Zinfandel, you really have to watch it because sometimes it tends to not finish fermentation because for some reason or another. So Cabernet, you want to find the perfect balance of extracting tannins, but not making it too tannic. So there's a lot of, things that you're thinking about during fermentation and making the wine. But the closest thing for food and wine pairing, I think, is Pinot Noir. I've taken my Pinot Noirs and paired it with whitefish, sea bass, halibut, to steak. And, you couldn't get much broader.
Well, I was going to ask you, beating me to that question, but I was going to ask you with food and wine pairing if you follow the rules or if you like to break them. I mean, how do you approach food and wine pairing?
I approach it, well, I tell people, I don't care what you pair, whatever you like to drink with whatever you like to eat, that's fine. I'm not going to shake my finger at you. But for me, a lot of it, sometimes it's something that's, there's a total dichotomy between the food and the wine, but sometimes that elevates both. Sometimes they're very similar. For example, if you're having a pork dish with some type of fruit glaze to it or something like that, and so what fruit glaze are you using? And what, like if I'm doing let's say I'm doing blackberry thing, then, I might grab a Zin or grab a Grenache or something like that. If I'm doing, but you don't have to. That's the cool thing, because sometimes you'll bring out fruits in your wine with the food, or sometimes you'll bring out notes in the food because of the wine. And so a lot of it is really just trying it. I always tell people, I can't tell you the exact rules of what to do. Try it. You might not like that pairing. I might love it. It's all subjective. So please try it, practice it, and that's way you become your own expert. And I don't have to tell you.
Well, here's something else about subjective opinion. What's your thoughts on wine critics and scores?
I'm not the hugest fan. Again, they're very subjective. I think there's politics involved in a lot of it. I think for people that, when you live in wine country and you live around so many great wineries and your friends are great winemakers, and I've been into this whole wine thing for the last, 30 years, right? So, or not that long, but close to it. And so, I've been practicing a lot. So if you're someone who is not close to wine country, those scores can be helpful, because there's somebody telling you that this is what they like. And what I think every consumer should do is see if that, find a critic, find a publication that they agree with almost all the time. And then you can rely on it, but don't rely on it solely. Really, you should go out and, as a consumer, you should be the one, writing your own reviews about these wines.
Okay, quick question. Red, white, or rosé? Okay. Still or sparkling wine?
Mostly still, but I do love sparkling.
And of the sparkling, champagne or from somewhere else?
I'm kind of a snob that way. I love those little tiny bubbles and those really, really nice champagnes. I drink a lot of sparkling from other places. I drink Cava, Prosecco, and sparklings from outside of Champagne also. And there's some lovely ones. And so I do a lot of that.
So you don't pick. You can't pick one or the other.
But, well, if I see 5 bottles on there and there's one from Champagne and I know the producer, I'm probably going to try that one first.
And when you've tried all those wines and end up with a little hangover, any special remedies?
Oh, man. Sleep. Yeah, I kind of go for something fatty, greasy. If I'm in, here in America, I'm probably going to do, I'm going to find a nice bacon cheeseburger. There's I've been in New York and had that, I don't know what you call it, that hangover feeling. I'm not really familiar with it, but, I went down to the Lower East Side and got a big plate of pork and rice and beans for like $7 that I couldn't eat the whole thing. I think I ate that for like 2 days, but
a good remedy.
Yeah.
So what do you think that a non-drinker loses out on by not tasting your wine?
I think that the fun part about drinking wine is that you do get so many aromas of different things and flavors in the wine once you really start. And it doesn't just taste like wine. You'll get different fruits. You'll get earthiness. You'll get mushrooms. You'll get floral. You'll get, all sorts of different aromas and tastes. And discovering those, that's what you miss. And that's the fun part for me is, when fermenting Sauvignon Blanc this year. It starts out and it smells like pears. And then I come in the next day and it smells like grapefruits. And then 2 days later, I come in and it smells like papaya and mango. And then when it's almost done fermenting, I'm smelling it and like all three of those are there. And you're just going, this is amazing. And so then when you try it when it's bottled, you get all of that. And that's the fun part of discovering wine. That's the fun part of drinking wine, is that you get to discover things like that. And even if you're not a drinker, I would still like to smell, because the smell is the most powerful part anyway. So
space aliens land on your property.
Yay.
Which of the wines from your cellar would you have them taste?
All of them.
Why pick? Give them the whole lot.
Exactly.
So, as a winemaker and working in the vineyards and managing different vineyards they work with, I know that each vintage tells a different story. I think you would agree with that.
Yes.
But do you find there are more things that repeat themselves from year to year, or the opposite?
Yeah. I mean, if you're in California, especially, where the growing season is, we don't have that hard of a growing season compared to other, world-class wine regions. Mm-hmm. So here especially, I think, if as long as you're using the same grapes from the same vines, it's a lot easier to make a wine that's consistently tastes the same vintage after vintage. Now, obviously, there's going to be differences. I was just tasting in 2010, which I love, and I think it's one of the reasons why I got into this is to try and make a Pinot Noir as close to something in Burgundy, but do it here in California. And right now, just 2010, it's a 2010 vintage. That's how it's tasting. And the 2011 is tight. I tasted my friend's wine also, who's a really good winemaker, and he made Pinot from 4 different regions here in California. And sure enough, all of them were just kind of like, in 2011s, we're all just kind of like, yeah, you're trying, you're reaching, but you're just not quite there. And then you go to 12 and bam. And then you go to 13 and bam. So yeah, every once in a while you get one of those years and it's just like, yeah. But for the most part, I think you should be able to be consistent.
Mm-hmm. And when harvest is going to start, do you have any good luck rituals?
Yeah. First bin that is dumped into first fruit we start processing. We always open a bottle of champagne or sparkling of some type and toast it. And usually it's Sauvignon Blanc. So I pour half a bottle on top of the grapes. Boom. There you go.
Sounds like a good tradition.
Yeah.
Make some happy grapes.
Yeah, there you go.
Are there any omens or signs that you capture each year that will predict the outcome of a harvest?
Not really. I sometimes watch tomato crops. I know this is weird, but I see how people's tomatoes are going or my tomatoes are going. I'm like, okay. If they're very prolific, if for some reason, I'll go, oh, I think we're going to have a good year. So the reason I say that is because, and I've kind of watched this over the last 10 years or so, just watched how people's tomato harvests have gone. And if it's a big harvest and, and the tomatoes are amazing, then I go, oh, grapes are going to be amazing.
There's a good sign. Do you ever talk to your wine?
Yes.
And what do you say to your wine?
Let's see. I hug and pet my barrels, and I talk to the wine inside until I love it. I'll sometimes very nicely ask it to finish fermentation or finish malolactic fermentation, especially when it's in barrel. I'll just kind of stroke it and say, you can finish. I know you can. Very softly. I'll sing. I sing in the winery when I'm working on it. So, yeah, of course I talk to the wine.
Well, some happy wine that you have.
I hope so.
So when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Michael Jackson.
Okay, and after you realized that you could not be Michael Jackson?
A musician.
A musician?
Yeah.
And you did pursue that for a while, did you not?
I did. I did that for my guess my second life. Yeah, I did that for a while, for about 10 years or so. Yeah. And that was amazing. It was a lot of fun. But, it's also a hard business. And, I was very passionate about it. But I also realized that I was not as engaging with other human beings as I should have been.
And because you worked in music before, I'll ask you, do you have a favorite singer or group?
I don't know if I have a favorite. Usually it flips, it changes. Right now I listen to a lot of old stuff. So right now I'm listening to Ohio Players, a lot of old funk. Ohio Players and some old Commodores and then sometimes I listen to old, like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath.
Runs the gamut.
Right. And sometimes I'm listening to Miles Davis or something like that. Ron Carter is a bass player. I used to play bass and I love it. So he's one of my favorites. And then, sometimes I throw on some, classical music. And so it depends on the mood. So I don't really have anything that's a favorite. And
aside from listening to music, what else do you do in your free time?
Let's see. Free time. I like to go mushroom hunting in the fall and winter. So I will start pursuing that the next time it rains. I will be out looking for mushrooms. And let's see. I read a lot. I'm an experiment and I do a lot of. So the cooking thing is a big thing for me.
And when you're planning a romantic evening, what is the wine that you would be ordering?
Okay, so if I'm out in a restaurant, well, it depends on who I'm with. I mean, if I'm with my girlfriend.
I would hope that's the only person you're having a romantic evening with.
I think I didn't know we were talking specifics. So, yes. So if Christina and I go to a romantic dinner, the first thing I'm ordering is appetizer and bubbles. First thing, glass. If I'm splurging, I might find like an Henriot or a Billicard or something like that, and get a bottle of it.
So bubbles will always start out the night of a romantic evening.
Yes.
What do you think the best piece of advice was that you ever received?
Don't overthink it.
Nice and to the point. I like that. Any advice you'd like to give our listeners today?
Don't overthink it. It's so true with everything in life. It's one of the things that people do is they try to manipulate things and they try to change the situation when sometimes if you just let it happen, you'll cope and you'll deal and then it'll be easier instead of you just messing with it.
And what would you say is your proudest achievement to date in your work?
Just surviving being a entrepreneur, owner, winemaker. That's the biggest thing. This year is my 10th vintage. Happy
anniversary.
Thank you.
Big achievement.
Yeah, I think that's my, not that I'm getting rich at it, but that's cool. I eat well and I drink well and I live in a beautiful spot. So I'm cool.
So finish the sentence for me. A table without wine is like?
A day without night.
Very poetic. Very poetic. Okay. A VIP from any walk of life is photographed in a restaurant by the paparazzi. And in the photograph, it's a bottle of your wine sitting on the table. Mm-hmm. Who do you want that person to be?
That's a tough question.
Sports figure, actor, musician, historical figure.
I think, I think it would be Barack Obama.
Something told me you would answer that way. I just got that feeling. I don't know. Okay. What's your prediction in the future? Are we going to be drinking wine in 300 years, 500 years, beyond? And do you think we'll be drinking what we're drinking now?
I don't know if we'll be drinking what we're drinking now, because 300 400,000 years ago, we're not drinking what they're drinking. But yeah, I think there'll be some form of it. I think that human beings are always going to have this tactile need to make wine close to the same way we're making it now. They want to feel the grapes. They want to see it growing. There's going to be new technologies out there. You know, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, you can synthesize anything at this point, you know, maybe in that point. Mm-hmm. But I think there's still going to be people that just go, you know what, I'm going to grow these grapes on this land, and I'm going to, or in a hothouse if I can't grow it outside because of global warming. Sorry to sound dire, but somehow, some way, people are going to grow grapes. They're going to crush them and turn it into fruit, into juice, and they're going to ferment it. And they're going to stick it on oak, and they're going to something, and that's what it's going to be. And there's just something, I don't want to say romantic, because the business is not romantic, even though it may seem so. But there's just something so special and magical about when you open a barrel and the first thing you smell is the wine and the oak at the same time, and it just wafts up into your nose, and you're just like, and you know, I've been doing this for a long time, and every time it happens, I always have this little smile on my face. Mm. I could be working with 100 barrels all down, and every barrel I just go, oh. and that smells different than that barrel, and that barrel smells different, and it's all the same wine, the same, you know, everything. It's just every barrel will be different, and you just go, oh, this is great.
So we'll never lose that.
I hope not. I don't think so.
So you're being sent off to a deserted island. What 3 wines would you take with you?
Do I have food on this island?
It's your deserted island.
It's my deserted island? Sweet. I think I'd have I'd have a lot of wine. But if there's 3 wines...
It's your island, but you get 3 wines.
3 wines. And do I get, like, a massive amount of these 3 wines?
Sure.
Okay, cool. I know I'm making this difficult. I think I would have the Billicard salmon. I'm not sure. It would be a Pinot Noir. I don't know if it would be from Burgundy or from here, but definitely a Pinot Noir. And I'm going to say a Sauterne of some.
I think it's a well thought out. Don't overthink it, right. But well thought out answer. Yeah.
Now, see, if I was overthinking, I would have tried to figure out which actual Pinot, because there's so many I love.
But don't overthink. Remember the advice.
Exactly. So I'm just going to say Pinot.
So what is one winemaking region in the world that you'd still like to explore?
There's many. I would love to do a whole trip on the northern part of Spain, just doing the whole coast up there. I would love to do, I've never done Champagne, Burgundy, Rhone Valley. I would love to do Tuscany, which would be, it would be amazing. I mean, I love Italian varietals, so
I think you just need to take a trip around the world.
Yeah, well, if I can find somebody to sell all my wine for me, and that ain't happening.
So, before we finish, just one more thing.
Yeah.
Play a little game, wine and music.
Okay.
So, tell me what music you'd be listening to if you were drinking your Billicard Salmon Rosé champagne.
I think I would be listening to... See, everybody would probably say classical, but I'm not saying classical. I'm thinking jazz more.
Jazz. Okay.
Yeah.
And what about Chateauneuf du Pape?
Chateauneuf du Pape, it depends. If it's got a little Brett in it, that little funk going on, then I think I'm listening to Parliament.
Okay.
Funkadelic.
Okay. And since I know that you actually play this game on your own website, what about your Pinot Noir?
Depends on which one. I have one that's 2013 Bacchgliubi, which is Manhattan Penthouse Midnight Sade. There's one where, and it goes to my Santa Rita Hills one, which is a bigger Pinot than, and that there's a woman in the 70s who was married to Miles Davis. Her name is Betty Davis, not with a Y at the end, not an E. And if you look her up, she's just this black woman with a huge afro, funky space clothes, and just this raunchy, funky music going on, all the lyrics are full of double entendres or not. It's blatant.
So that goes with the Santa Rita Hills Pinot Noir.
Yeah, it's just like, it's funky, it's fun, it's big, but it still has that, I guess, kind of feminine touch to it.
Well, I think you filled in a few of those for me. You made my life easy, so thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Dan, thank you for joining us at Wine Soundtrack. And before we go, if you can just remind people where they can find you and your wines.
Oh, yeah. It's at lobjetwines.com. That's LOBJET wines.com. You can also find me on Instagram with the same Lobjet Wines. You can find me on the Facebook at Lobjet Wines. You can also find me at Pinot Noir Dude on Twitter. So yeah, look me up, say hi, and mention the podcast. That'd be great.
Sounds good. Well, we'll find you at L'Objet Noir, and have a good evening.
Thank you. You too, Allison.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.